Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you joining around the world. Tim Hall, Head of Products here at Influx. You've got my Twitter handle up there. I promise we'll only tweet things about things happening at Influx. So go ahead and follow me if you want the latest and greatest direct from me and the products team here. Today I'm going to cover a little bit more in depth on the roadmap and where we're headed in three parts. First, we're going to talk about Influx Cloud. Paul touched on a few of these items yesterday and how they're related to open source and the way that our journey has changed as we started on the 2.0 efforts. Then we're going to talk a little bit about IoT and where we're headed with the Internet of Things and progress that's being made across everything from data acquisition to Flux and GeoTemporal Queries and visualization of that data. And then lastly, we'll talk about where we're headed in terms of feedback that we're getting from community members, where they'd like more assistance, more help, and how we might deliver those materials to all of you. So let's start with Influx Cloud. So I'm going to do a little bit of catching up for those of you that may not have played with Influx Cloud recently, and then pepper in a little bit of the road ahead in each area. So first and foremost, we've worked hard to deliver InfluxDB Cloud as an elastic serverless time series database as a service. And this started, we relaunched on September 10th of 2019. And over the course of the past 8 or so months, we've been delivering this service across multiple regions and multiple cloud service providers, some of whom are sponsors of this event. And we thank you again to AWS and Google. And we also have recently released Influx Cloud on Azure. And this is available in Western Europe at the moment. We heard a ton of feedback during our travels around the world that our European customers and partners were super eager to use InfluxDB on Azure. So we started and launched that service there. And it's currently in beta. Now, one of the questions that people have for us about, like, so what does this look like for you? It's the same code bits that are available in GA across all the other cloud service providers. One of the things that we do is we roll out beta instances either on a new cloud provider or in a new region is we just have a little burn-in period where we, again, open up for usage at the free tier, which is rate limited, and invite people to join. And then as we go through our final sanity checks and make sure everything is good to go, then we'll move to GA. And at that point, people can pay for the rate limits to be removed and additional capabilities to be unlocked. And so aside from delivering those core platform services, service availability and durable, we don't lose your data, obviously. We're optimizing for the different experiences across the cloud service provider. We've been delivering additional capabilities in terms of user provisioning and extending the various services across visualization, alerts and notification targets, and eventually, as Paul talked about yesterday, we'll be delivering tiered data storage as well as a future-facing feature. So in a nutshell, since September of last year, we've been pretty busy. It's no small feat to launch a cloud service, not just on one cloud service provider, but across all three and multiple regions at the same time. And I think Paul outlined pretty well the machinery that we've put in place and the automation that we've put in place to make this all possible. But from a feature function perspective, we've been super busy as well. And so just to give you a quick highlight of the things that we've been working on that start landing in cloud first, and then some of which are trickling out to open source through the various alpha and beta releases that we've been delivering. So first and foremost, if you stick around later, you're gonna hear a great talk from Johnny Steenbergen around InfluxDB Templates. I definitely recommend you listen in for more details on that and how we're attempting to expand our community and get all of you to share your expertise with each other based on what you've built on top of the platform. We've worked on everything from CSV import to introducing 10 client libraries. We've integrated our cloud offering with AWS and GCP in terms of their marketplaces and can provide integrated bills. I think Paul touched yesterday on some Flux functionality, including things like the SQL from and to functions that cover not only Snowflake, but now AWS Athena, SQL Server, and soon BigQuery. But we didn't stop there. We've also added notification endpoints for Discord, Telegram, which was a community requested effort. And we have a PR in motion now for Microsoft Teams as well, for those of you in the Azure environment or using Teams for communication. And we notice a lot of you are happy with social sign-on via Gmail. We can see the stats and the uptake and the feature performance there. So we'll go into a little more detail on some of these throughout the talk, but it has been quite a busy 6 to 9 months as we've delivered the service and continue to add capabilities steadily across that time while expanding the footprint. So first announcement is the general availability for Microsoft Azure. Folks have been signing up for the free tier and exploring the beta. We appreciate that. But the planned GA will be on July 8th. We're super excited about the opportunity to work with Microsoft on their technology and in their environment. And obviously, as I mentioned, the first location for this is launching in Western Europe to start. And what's next? US East. So for those of you on the East Coast who are Azure fans and working within the Microsoft environment, that'll be the next instance that we roll out, likely in Q3, and if not, the beginning of Q4 at the latest. But that's the current course and speed. So we're excited to announce that, and stay tuned for more details as we hit the 8th of July. Now, for those of you who saw demo data appear on my slide and may not be aware of what it is and may not have explored this in cloud, I thought I'd just quickly walk through the experience of what that looks like. So the thing about demo data is it gives you a jumpstart experience to explore the platform without making any investment on your part. Now, what does that actually mean? I'll give you a quick 30-second tour. So when you get into the platform, there's some assistive technology that's available. In this case, you can click on the button that says, hey, I want to try using the demo data that's available, as opposed to configuring Telegraph or using one of the client libraries to get data in. And when you go through the experience, it adds a specific bucket to your instance, and it's website monitoring data. And you can immediately start building queries and exploring that data set all on your own. In addition, we've provided a pre-built dashboard that you can explore all the queries that we've already created and how to take advantage of the platform more broadly. And the idea for this is for those folks that may be brand new to Influx, we wanted to give them a jumpstart experience that they could explore. And if there are other data sets that you want to suggest from that exist in the world, we'd love to hear from you in the Slack channel. Those are things that we can certainly incorporate later to provide more variety in terms of data to explore. Now, in addition, we've been working on expanding support for multiple users within the same account. So if you're the person who signs up for Influx Cloud, you can now invite other participants, and they will have the same level of permissions that you do, the sort of administrative rights. And I'll quickly take you on a tour of that. It's really simple. Under the user settings, you can go through and add their email address. And today you see the assigned role drop list there in that purple box, and it's set to owner. And what we'll do is expand this feature forward. There'll be additional roles that you can offer. And then you see the two buttons here on the right. The purple button and the red button allows you to resend invitations or withdraw invitations from the people that you've invited to your account. So two quick tours of features that have landed in cloud. And again, the behavior of these in cloud is unique to cloud. There are open source equivalents for certainly the multi-user setup, but that demo data feature is unique to our cloud users. So what's next? As I mentioned, for multi-user, we should have the read-only user capability. So a lot of folks are saying, hey, it's great that I can invite other people that have the same level of permissions, but what I'd really like to do is start sharing some of these dashboards I've created with other folks, and I don't want them to modify them. So Read-only user is in flight right now, kind of wrapping up the final development stages of that, and look for that to arrive in early July. Now, beyond that, one of the things that's come up, and we've heard feedback from our cloud users, both across the free tier and the paid tier, is, hey, it's a little bit weird that the command line interface that you would use to interact with the platform is bundled up with the open source distribution. And so one of the things that we did as part of beta 12 is separate out the CLI from the open source database. And so now if you're a cloud customer, you can download that separate CLI package and only the CLI package for your use. And one of the things that that CLI package now includes is support for import of CSV files. So if you've got comma separated value files that you're either generating or working with as a static data set, you can use the write command off the CLI and both define and reuse CSV annotations as part of the import process. So if you've already created one, you can reference that and add it. Or if you need to build one on the fly, you can define those annotations. And you can do everything from skipping headers or rows and columns, or you can skip rows with errors. You can define specific encoding styles and potentially even use alternative data formats. For example, Boolean, if you have a 0 or a 1 or a T or an F, as opposed to the fully written out true or false, you can specify that in the setup. So it's a super powerful new capability to work with those static data files. And so whether those are things that you've already had existing over a long time or continue to generate on a regular basis, you'll now have the ability to work with that, certainly from the command line, and get that data in to Influx much more easily than ever before. So what's next in Influx Cloud? Paul actually stole my thunder a little bit yesterday in mentioning that we will be supporting InfluxQL. For those of you that are new to Influx and been using us in cloud already, InfluxQL is the query language that existed as part of the 1.x release. And for those community members who have been with us for a long time, we definitely have heard your feedback, and we'll be introducing InfluxQL support through the API. Meaning you'll get compatibility, which will allow you to continue to use your existing V1 client libraries, certainly for query. You'll be able to use your existing dashboard tools, either Chronograph or some other dashboarding tool that Ryan McKinley will talk about next. And it should make migration just easier for everybody in general. And I think Paul talked about this yesterday. Like, we've been very deliberate about our journey from cloud to open source. We have created a very, very large community of users over the past 7 years. And we have a high degree of respect for all of you that are using the technology from a 1.x perspective. And we are in no means rushing to try to create something and cause you to make a bunch of changes that are unnecessary. What we're trying to do is ensure that you have a smooth path from 1.x. You can take advantage of new capabilities at your leisure, and that we make this as much of a limo ride as possible from 1.x to 2.0. So in addition to that, we'll also be adding support for the 1.x write API, again, so you can use your existing client libraries. You can use Telegraph with the 1.x output. Telegraph has had the 2.x output available for quite some time. Actually, it's one of the first things that we released as part of our 2.x line, so that you'd have sufficient time to essentially configure and activate that. So for example, I think it released originally in either 1.8 or 1.9 of Telegraph, and we're on 1.14 today. So these things tend to have a little bit of a long tail. And so even if you deployed Telegraph, a year ago, odds are that the 2.0 output plugin is there. And so just adding that configuration to do a dual write scenario, where you're either writing to your existing 1.x production instance while you're also writing to 2.0, is something you'll be able to do through configuration and not code. And it won't require you to change or upgrade the deployment of Telegraph. So all that is planned, and that is starting July 1st. So the target for us is to roll out these capabilities across all the cloud providers and have them available by July 1st. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, we'll be updating the documentation, and there'll be announcements associated with this availability. Now, another thing we talked briefly about yesterday with Paul, and again, stick around for Johnny's talk later today, is InfluxDB Templates. So why did we do this? Essentially, one of the things that we see is people are building expertise, and they're extracting their expertise and they're putting it into various assets within our platform. So whether that's specific configurations related to how they collect and acquire data, whether it's the specific queries then that they build on top of those configurations to build visualizations and dashboards, or whether they're building specific tasks, alerts, and notification checks. All of those things are assets that get created and contained within the platform. And many of these things are not proprietary to your unique business. And the idea is, shouldn't we share these capabilities with others? And so I like the phrase standing on the shoulders of giants. Many of you are giants in the Kubernetes space or network monitoring or deeper in security certainly than I am. And the idea is, if you would like to share your expertise with others, templates is the way to do so. And we invite you to join the InfluxDB Community Templates repo. And Michael Hall, who is on, our community manager, is certainly curating and interacting with many of you who are contributing templates today. And so the idea is, share your monitoring expertise, share what you're up to. It's a simple YAML format, and you can extract those assets easily using the CLI today and package those up, share them in a GitHub repo, typical process for PR reviews and feedback, and then others can consume those and pull those things in. Chris Trillo and the marketing team have done a great job of putting together a templates gallery right off of our website, so you can explore some of these things if you want to look at it from the sort of top level. One example Paul showed yesterday was the Apache HTTP and Tomcat template, and there's also Docker monitoring and more. And as a matter of fact, over the past month or two since we launched this in April, there's over 32 templates now available. Most of them are focused on DevOps monitoring, and you can see some of them here, whether it's infrastructure, network, or software monitoring. Obviously, we contributed the ones related to monitoring the tech stack itself. We have a couple of security monitoring templates now, not only X509 certs, but a new security template was added yesterday from Darren Fisher on our team, who's focused on checking the security access for websites, whether it's a 509 cert or whether it's basic auth, and just giving you a very simple view into whether the security is active and working successfully. Now, where we expect to see some growth in the coming days is on sort of this other category, whether it's exchange rates. We had an intrepid community member contribute a dashboard related to COVID-19 growth in South America, which has been a particular hotbed of late. But we're also seeing contribution in the IoT space. And in particular, there's at least two templates that I'm aware of up there. One is shown here, which is the air quality readings from this particulate matter sensors. And there's another one from the folks that are focused on Island Pulse, which is a sensor that uses Modbus as the means to gather its data. So again, share your expertise, collect these pieces of information right out of the platform, package them up, and definitely contribute to the community. We love your participation. So what's next related to templates? Well, obviously you can use the CLI today to both create and consume those templates. But what people are asking for is a UI-based consumption, starting with the cloud experience, and then this will obviously roll out to open source as well. So the idea behind this is you can browse the community templates either on the marketing website or in GitHub. You find a particular URL associated with that template, and when you click the button, it then reads that YAML file and gives you a description of the resources that are included within it, whether it's dashboards, tags, tasks, Telegraph configurations, etc. And then if you click install, obviously it'll go ahead and pull those assets into your instance, and then it'll give you an activity log that describes the dates and where it came from. Now, GitHub is supported, but you can also do private templates and upload them via files. So if you do have something that's proprietary and you only want to share amongst your team or team members across multiple environments, templates is a way to do that as well. So we're super excited about templates and what it opens up from a community perspective. Yeah, we'd love your participation. If you got more questions about templates, let us know in the Slack channel, or again, join Johnny's talk later today, and he will fill you in on all the technical gory details. Now, one of the things that templates delivers is we're shooting for a GitOps style experience where you can start from really an empty an empty OSS instance or an empty cloud account and really script the population of the whole thing from soup to nuts through the templating mechanism. So we hope you're as excited about this capability as we are, but let us hear from you. Love to engage on this topic. And then finally, on the cloud front, what's next? We've definitely heard some feedback about, is there a way for me to get my data back out once I feed it into cloud? And the answer is yes. Like today, we will give you your data back, if not by a GDPR edict. We're not interested in keeping your data. So today, you file a support request, and our team will package that up and drop your data back to you on an SFTP server. And obviously, that's not the ideal experience that we're shooting for. What we'd like to be able to do is drive towards a self-service backup function to allow you to trigger the creation of the backup, and then allow you to restore it either to another cloud account or to an open source instance. Now, the way that we're planning on doing this is obviously if you're within a cloud environment, many of the cloud providers have an object storage mechanism. So in Amazon, there's a S3, and what you would do is you'll associate an S3 bucket to your cloud account and enable it for write. And then you will be able to trigger a self-service backup either as a one-off or ultimately a scheduled mechanism that will allow you to move your data from Influx to the backup format of your choice into that S3 location. And similarly for GCP and Azure, or similar object storage setups. And depending on which cloud you're in, you'll just configure that and go. And that'll be the place that we start. And then similarly, what we'd like to be able to do is enable that same mechanism for bulk import. So if you think way back to FTP, FTP had the same sort of style where there was a write location and a read location. In the same fashion, you'll be able to configure S3 buckets, for example, for both write or read, and then InfluxDB Cloud will interact with those locations based on what you're trying to achieve. So if it's backup, we'll dump your data back out. And if it's import, you'll be able to put everything from line protocol to CSV files. As we mentioned earlier, we have the ability now to work with those. And then ultimately, the goal is to also allow you to bring TSM files in. So raw TSM, if you're using Influx open source and you want to chuck in an entire set of data, drop those in, and then we'll trickle feed it into your Influx account. And then I put a ... there because obviously there may be more formats that we're able to support over time. And I think Paul hinted a little bit about this in some blogs that you might want to go back and read about where we're headed with this. So that's the quick tour of what's going on with cloud. Now, in the second part of the talk, we're going to look at expanding workloads, and in particular, IoT and GeoTemporal. So we mentioned all of the different templates that exist for DevOps that have been created over the last couple of months, and obviously we're starting to see some now appear for the IoT space. However, we have been hard at work, obviously, on data acquisition via Telegraph for the IoT crowd. Now, whether this is going way back to 2015 and the Kafka consumer plugin that we created, MQTT was added after that. Fibaro, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a home automation system. And I should note here that we are also have a native data acquisition mechanism that's associated with the OpenHab project. For those of you who are home automation geeks, and Rick Brown from Influx, I'm looking at you. But OpenHab has support in OpenHab 2 for a native data acquisition mechanism where you can just direct your stats your home automation stats to Influx 1. And then OpenHAB 3 already has support for InfluxDB 2. And so as soon as that's released, you'll be able to pipe your data directly into the 2.0 either cloud or open source. In 2019, another community member contributed the Neptune Apex plugin. This is for monitoring your home aquarium. And again, like, you know, one of the things that builds a great community is having projects like that. Now, is that going to be a huge commercial driver for Influx? No. Do we care? Yeah, we care a lot, because one of the things that's great is if you can be successful using this technology in a home or hobbyist project, the odds that you might bring that into your workplace later because you've got familiarity and you rely on it, that goes up. And so we're happy seeing those kinds of contributions as well. And obviously the connections with our cloud service provider partners, whether it's AWS Kinesis or GCP PubSub, those were added. And then as we've continued to expand down, you see another hobbyist project, Fireboard. We actually have a Slack channel at Influx called Influx Pits, where people talk about barbecuing and using their fireboards to monitor what's going on their weekend cooking projects. And obviously this universal power supply monitoring capability was added. And then in our latest release of Telegraph 1.14, we added support for Azure IoT Event Hub. Obviously, as we continue our deepening our relationship with Microsoft, we wanted to have equivalence in terms of capturing those events out of their IoT infrastructure. And I mentioned Modbus. So Modbus support for those of you in the industrial IoT space was added in 1.14. And then somewhat quietly, we added support for the Google's geospatial library called S2. And what this plugin does is it allows you to take lat and long data that's arriving from various IoT devices and sensors and index it on the fly with the appropriate what's called S2 cell ID. So it's an index, and it allows you to decorate that data coming from the device on the fly before it arrives into Influx. And then you'll be able to use that upstream in your query mechanisms. And we'll talk a little bit about more of that in a second. And then last but not least, the other super popular protocol in the industrial IoT space is something called OPC UA. And so between OPC UA and Modbus, that covers largely 80% of the devices in the industrial space. And so that plugin is being worked. There's a PR up for it, and it will appear as an external plugin as part of the 1.15 release of Telegraph. Now, if you listen to Barbara Nelson's talk yesterday about Telegraph and acquiring data, and she's excited about the execd plugin, that mechanism now opens up a whole means for us to deliver a range of plugins that are additive and not necessarily baked and hardwired into each individual release. And OPC UA will be one of those. It's an external plugin that should be able to activate, download, and associate with Telegraph. So for those of you in the industrial IoT space, I hope you're excited about that. Now, where does this lead us? So I mentioned the S2 Geo plugin that was added. And so where this goes is we added a whole raft of Flux-based functions to support GeoTemporal queries. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the percentage is, whether it's 50-50, but anybody that has metal that moves is typically involved with using GeoTemporal. And you can see here on the right, I actually tried to zoom in on Paul's part of New York City there. Williamsburg is highlighted to try to explain a little bit about how the Google Geospatial Library works. Effectively, it uses something called Hilbert curves, which is a mechanism for representing coordinates on the Earth in a whole series of squares, or this sort of geometric pattern. And the idea is that you can get an extreme coverage area and allow you to dial in the level of precision that you need to find the metal that's moving across the globe. And as you can see here, the indexing mechanism, it can make very quick determinations about what exists within a particular shape, and then what to do as it reaches the edge or the boundary of that shape. And you can see the squares getting a little bit smaller. And the precision of those squares will be limited by the precision that you specified in your geo hash or S2 cell ID that you're decorating. So that's a kind of general overview. Now, in particular, what we've done is these GeoTemporal queries exist here. You have everything from being able to filter rows, or apply a grid filter or a more strict filter, which the strict filter then will respect the exact boundary location that you define. You can do aggregations and transformations using these functions. You can actually calculate the S2 cell ID on the fly. So if you've already fed in a ton of data to Influx with that is just including the lat and long, you can calculate the S2 cell ID on the fly if you wish, or if you wanted to change the precision for some more precise use case, you can certainly do that. You can also use a function called as tracks to track a particular series as it moves across the globe. And then there are obviously some supported shapes that come out of the box, including box, circle are the obvious ones. And then you can define your own shapes using polygon. So polygon can be any enclosed shape with any number of array of points. So those basic functions all exist within the experimental package of Flux today, but I encourage you to explore those. If you have a geotemporal use case, definitely explore these functions that we've added. We'd love your feedback on this. This is our first foray into expanding the workload and capability more deeply for folks in this IoT space that have metal that moves, and we love your feedback. Now, obviously, if I acquire the data and can decorate it on the fly, and I can now query it back in terms of the various functions that I've defined here, what's next for GeoTemporal? Well, obviously, it's visualization. And so this is what's next. So the idea here is to provide access to OpenStreetMaps to give you a visual representation of your data. Now, this component is being worked on now and integrated in through our Giraffe front-end library, which we'll talk about in a minute. And this will allow you to do a wide variety of visualizations, from point-based to heat maps to circles and markers and more, all based on your geotemporal data. So look for that coming a little bit later this summer. We've got it, we're working through the PR process now, and one of the things we're trying to do is figure out the best way to deploy this in the cloud environment first. And then the secondary thing we need to work out is what's the mechanism for open source users to gain access to this. Not everybody wants 800 gigabytes of maps directly integrated with the open source offering. That would definitely bloat the open source 2.0. So we'll figure out how to get that incorporated in a way that you can quickly add it if that's what you're after. Okay, and then finally on the last part of my talk, I want to talk a little bit about expanding our tools and documentation. We've got a lot of community members. We think of you all as builders. People are building something new, building DevOps monitoring and observability solutions. But we know there's more qualities to you and the work that you do, whether you're building an IoT specific application for your customers, or whether you're doing something in the data science space. And so some of the feedback that we've gotten is, hey, if I'm a developer and building something new, can't you describe exactly what you have available for me in terms of uptaking the entire platform? Or if I'm a data scientist, how can you help me integrate with existing tools and technologies that I'm already familiar with? And so we hear you, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback, and we've already made some progress down this track. So I'll share some of that with you and then where we're headed. So first, for developers, one of the things we heard is, hey, if I'm writing Flux, it's a new language, I need more support. I need more syntax highlighting, auto-completion, error highlighting, function signature suggestions, like a modern language. And so we have built a VS Code plugin. For those of you that are using Visual Studio and are not aware of this plugin, it exists, and I think it's up to 900 and something installs now. But it actually supports all those features and capabilities by leveraging something called LSP, which is a language server protocol, to allow for that assistive highlighting and completion. So definitely take advantage of that. Secondarily, Paul mentioned the 10 client libraries that we currently have available. And within each of those client libraries, in line to the application itself, we have those suggestions for how do you do the install, how do you initialize, how do you read data, write data, etc., for each of the libraries based on the capabilities that they support. And that's great. It's something that we've never been able to do before. You've always had to step out to GitHub or step out to the documentation to find more details about the clients, and sort of bringing those sorts of suggestions right in line has been a good first start. Now, last year at this event, if you had attended, for those of you who attended, I actually announced and launched the 2 front-end libraries that we have. Giraffe, which is a React-based visualization library that we use to build 2.0. And again, the GeoTemporal Visualization components are being pulled through into Giraffe, and then obviously all the way through to the cloud service, and then ultimately open source. And Clockface. And Clockface is the React plus TypeScript UI kit that allows you to do styling of your application. And both of these can be used to build a front end. And since last year, we've continued to enhance and extend these capabilities. Giraffe has a full documentation set in GitHub that you can take advantage of now. But the question really is, all right, what's next? So you've got these parts, and now can you help put them in context? So first and foremost, I think Paul mentioned this yesterday, we've gotten a request next for a Rust library that'll make a round 11 client libraries. And if there's other languages that you're interested in, please do let us know. We've got, we've moved through the building and rebuilding of the client libraries and providing support and better consistency for the entire client library base on 2.0 than we've ever had before. But I think where we're headed is we really need more developer-oriented documentation that gives you a specific canonical example to follow for both the back end and the front end application building activities using the libraries that we provided. For those of you who participated in last century's J2EE application building, may be familiar with something called the pet store. That was sort of the canonical example. We're thinking about that for inspiration for how to provide this kind of documentation and a path through this, which would be largely focused on an IoT related use case where you're delivering a specific series to a specific customer, and you also may want to do sort of a fleet management use case where you're looking at all the data, but that's available to the operator. So exploring those 2 use cases in the context of an IoT solution is one of the places that we might focus. But we're definitely open to hearing ideas about what you all have built from a community perspective. And again, not the specific proprietary nature of it, but if there are specific patterns that you feel would be important to share with others, we'd love to get your feedback, and then we can incorporate that and share that with the rest of the community. So that's on the developer front. On the data scientist front, this also quietly was introduced over the last 6 months or so, but we have integrated our Python client with the Jupyter Notebook environment, and we have a native Flux interpreter that has merged as part of Apache Zeppelin. Both of these are notebooking tools that are popular with the data science crowd, and you can take advantage of these to connect to Influx. And what this looks like is within Jupyter environment, you can go ahead and import, run their various import statements in Python, and obviously include the InfluxDB client. And then you can start constructing everything from your query to the definition, the connection string to connect up to either the open source instance or cloud, and execute those queries directly from that notebook environment, and run and rerun and evaluate and analyze the data that's available to you. And within the Zeppelin environment, you can see the interpreter there at the top, hopefully, where you just say InfluxDB, and then you can start typing Flux directly in, and then you'll get a list of the fields that come back, and then you can decide how you want to visualize and shape that data and potentially do more analysis within the Zeppelin notebook environment. And obviously for data scientists, having more native support within the Flux language, so you don't have to switch back and forth between Python and Flux, would be valuable. So Anais, who is one of our DevRel extraordinaires, has contributed 2 functions to the Flux language of late, linear regression and something called MAD, median absolute deviation. So look for those to merge here shortly. We'd also like to bring the Jupyter experience a little bit more in line with where Zeppelin is by having a native Flux editor as opposed to having to construct the query strings through Python. And so look for that as something that we do to improve the experience for folks that are using Jupyter. But last but not least, similar to the message for our developer crowd, we have done so many webcasts, so many blog posts sort of exploring data science with Influx, and we really have not collected those in a way that if you're starting from scratch, it's easy for you to find and access them. Yes, you can Google them, but that isn't the easiest way, I think, to browse all of the material and insights that we've gathered over the years in terms of working with everything from TensorFlow to Facebook Profit for forecasting, and so we're going to look to capture these sort of use cases, whether it's forecasting, anomaly detection, or machine learning, and document them in a way that if you're a data scientist, you can find them quickly and navigate through what we have available for you and how to tap into those capabilities. And so that's it. That's the talk. Next steps: DB Cloud. It's available. Sign up. Free tiers available for you to explore, feed your data in. If not, you've got demo data available that you can play with and check out the capabilities that are there. Build and share your templates. Join the community. Share your expertise. And if there are other things that you did not hear about, let's join us in the Slack channel, and we will answer your questions. So thanks for joining.
Cool. All right, before we get to the question from the audience, let's ask your 3 questions to the audience. And Jesse's going to post them into the Slack channel for everybody as well. So the first question that Tim wants to ask everybody is, what is his favorite hobby? And here's a hint: you can actually find postings on social media about his favorite hobby. We see it all the time in the Slack channel internally. Number 2, what is Tim's favorite new InfluxDB feature? Hint, we'll be talking more about it later today. And number 3, Tim has a dog named Harper. What breed of dog is she? Oh, that's why he didn't post the pictures, huh? All right, so those are the 3 questions from Tim. And then if you have a question for Tim, please post it either in the Slack channel or the Zoom chat or Zoom Q&A, whatever is easiest for you. And we will go through some of these questions. So the first question from Solomon is, loving the from-to SQL Server capabilities. Does this mean Microsoft SQL Server?
It does, and Azure as well. So not just the native, deployed and run by you, but it also works in the Azure environment.
Cool. Michael asks, are templates working with 1.8?
So templates is a feature that's unique to 2.0. And the reason why is it covers everything that we do. The acquisition mechanics around Telegraph, tasks, including the alerts and notifications, features that are unique and specific to 2.0. So it's a 2.0 only feature. What exists in terms of dashboard templates in 1.8 is out in Chronograph. And obviously, if you go to the Grafana community site, they have a raft of dashboard templates that are available for you as well. If you specifically dial that into the InfluxDB only source, you'll be able to see all of those. Cool. But it's just the dashboarding portion was really available on 1.x. And what we found and what we heard from community feedback is that we wanted to collect and capture all of the mechanisms that make up that dashboard, whether it was, like how did they even get the data that's then rendered by that dashboard? There's a wide variety of choices that you could make. And so there's complexity there that we'd like to simplify into a single unified package.
Okay. Pierre Luigi asks, I think a nice addition would be the development of an S7 native protocol plugin. Any plans for that?
There is now. Thanks for the suggestion. And we accept PRs, so we'd love to have your participation on that. As the protocols, Obviously, Telegraph is really focused on getting data into not only Influx, but a wide variety of other platforms. And so it is easily our most popular open source project. It's deployed on millions and millions of devices and servers worldwide. And so we're eager for that to continue. And so any of these sort of protocol suggestions that you have, definitely open an issue and provide some pointers for us to inspect and look at that may inspire other community members to contribute. Or if it's sort of hypercritical to your success, we'd be happy to talk with you and figure out how to move that forward.
Or you can also contribute yourself, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so Solomon asks, is it possible to embed dashboard cells in external apps like website or desktop apps? And I'm assuming you mean through the chronograph dashboard.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Chris.
Is it possible to embed dashboard cells, like the cells that you have in chronograph, into other external apps?
So if you want just the cell, then what I would do is I would go down the path of using the Giraffe library as the means to render just that cell. So this is one of the sort of classic things, right? So even though we're delivering in the 1.x line, you have a chronograph experience, and you can actually dial in the sort of read-only access to dashboards, and in the 2.x experience, you'll soon have read-only user access in the cloud offering and open source. There's a bunch of other stuff that's there, and it's like, well, I don't want people to know that there's all of these other sort of navigation items, and like it's sort of extraneous for what you're trying to deliver. And so in this case, I would definitely look at leveraging the Giraffe library to render those cells and queries, and then embed that into your application. And I know that there's some folks that we work with in Munich who were very interested in going down exactly that path.
Okay. Tristan asks, does the open source 2.0 also support GeoTemporal?
Absolutely. It's already there. Go explore it today. I think that went out as part of beta 9 or 10.
There you go, Tristan.
Yep.
Go for it.
And Tristan, give us your feedback. Like the more folks that start to use it and give us feedback, the more we can mature that and move it from sort of the experimental bucket of Flux into the mainline. I know we've got some suggestions that are outstanding for calculation of other elements in the geotemporal space, and I'm kind of holding off incorporating those until I hear a little bit more feedback from community members about the usefulness of what we've already provided. So your usage would be much appreciated, and obviously the feedback would be great.
So George yesterday actually asked what the timeline was for the Rust client. So I'm sure he's super psyched to see that on the roadmap.
My guess is Q3 is the rough timeline. We've been pumping these things out pretty regularly, so just stay tuned. It is the next, there's some continued maintenance and evolution work that we're doing on the libraries over time, but that's the next one that'll get built. And we've got folks that'll be reviewing that internally for programming consistency and those sorts of things before it goes out. But that's the next one on the list.
Nice. Pierre Luigi asks, are there Docker images for 2.0 available on Docker Hub?
Not yet, but that is certainly up next. So I believe we are working. So today, the way that this works is we have the Mac build and some generic Linux builds that are available. But the build is a subset of the total surface area that we offer on the 1.x line. But as we move from where we are today with beta 12 towards GA in the fall, we will be expanding the build surface area to essentially cover and include all of the same mechanisms and mechanics that we have for 1.x. And I actually think Michael Hall, our community manager, is working on that even as we speak.
Nice.
So that is absolutely in flight.
All right, so Pravin asked a good one. Are there any on-the-fly Telegraph configuration management in the roadmap? Currently, Telegraph needs to be restarted for any config changes.
So it doesn't need to be restarted for a config change, you can actually send it a SIG-HUP and it'll reread the configuration. So if you didn't know that, definitely try that out. It will definitely reread the config and keep it running.
Let's see. And then Peter asks, is there any Flux extension plugin syntax for his favorite text editor, Sublime Text?
No, but the same mechanisms and mechanics that we use for VS Code could be used for Sublime, I believe. So what we can do is take that suggestion back to our tools team and see what they can do.
Cool. Let me just check to see.
And Tim, before we let you go, it seems that you may have stumped the audience on questions 1 and 3. So do you want to give any hints?
Let's see.
Of your favorite hobby
yes,
and type of dog?
For a hint on number 3, I will post a photo into the Slack channel in Influx Days Virtual here in a moment. And then you can guess from there. Should not be too hard. And then in terms of my hobby, it's one part execution and one part chemistry. So maybe that will be a clue.
All right, we have one more question for the audience, and it's from Sush. Are there any plans for supporting auto rebalancing when this cluster is scaled?
So that's a 1.x question. This typically hasn't been a huge problem. So I'm sort of curious where things may have gone off the rails. I mean, we've tried to create a sort of somewhat operator-less system that would not require a rebalancing capability. But one of the things I know we've done is our SE team actually has a rebalancing script that they created that provides some automation around it. Maybe one of the things you could do is we can reach out to the SE team and just have them provide that to you. It's probably the easiest thing to tap into auto rebalancing.
So reach out to Rick, who's in the InfluxDB channel, Slack channel, and I'm sure he can get you connected to that script. Okay, so why don't we answer the questions? So what's your favorite hobby, Tim?
My favorite hobby is cooking. Someone guessed it. I saw scroll by in the blazing Slack channel.
All right.
I was asked at a very young age to be my mother's sous chef in the kitchen. She worked and she said, if you want to eat before 9 o'clock at night, then I'm going to need your help. So yeah, and my aunt actually was the chef for the governor of Maine for a number of administrations. So yeah, we got a little cooking in my blood.
And what about your favorite new InfluxDB feature?
Well, obviously, since I mentioned it a few times in Johnny's talk later today, it's InfluxDB Templates. I just think it's a huge community feature, and we would, it's one of those things where if you want to share, that you're a rocket scientist in a particular area, this is the best way for you to do it. Build on a platform, share with others. Don't let people guess at how to, instrument JBoss or, whatever the thing is, du jour. Help each other out, and none of this stuff is proprietary. So we can all kind of make all the boats float a little bit higher when we contribute to each other.
And what about Harper?
Harper is Harper the Border Collie. So I saw somebody else guess that as well. So.
Awesome. All right. So the winners are Adrian, Stuart, Rose, Parker. So we'll get those shirts out to you guys. Awesome, Tim. I think lots of questions, and I'm sure there'll be even more questions for you. So reminder to our audience, go into the InfluxDB speaker chat channel, and Tim will be hanging out there, and you can ask him a lot more questions. As I mentioned, Rick is there, one of the sales engineers, so you can also ask him, Sush, if you're interested in that script. And Paul is still here as well, so feel free to reach out to any of them. Thank you so much, Tim, like always. And any closing thoughts?
No, definitely hang around for the other talks today. Ryan's talk is great to give you a little bit of insight on where Grafana is going and how that is going to help all of our community users, our joint community users that are using both 1.x and 2.0 of Influx with Grafana 7.plus. Jeremy, great guy from BAI. I got a chance to spend some time with him at AWS reInvent, the last time we had a real live event. And I'm looking forward to hearing what they're up to. And then obviously Johnny's talk is going to be amazing.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim.